Hello and welcome. Thursday the 31st of March 2022. Thank you for joining. If you just give me a few moments to let the family know Man is live, and we shall begin our presentation. Certainty of Intention, Part 1, Equity and Trusts. This is part 1 of a 3-part series on the certainty of intention. There is going to be an introduction shortly, once I've just told everybody where we are. Give them a chance to come and join us. It's not going to be a long video. I've designed them so they are short and concise. I've listened to what you've said. You'll be happy to know it's not going to be a feature-length presentation. 20 to 30 minutes each video. Okay, so I'm just letting Telegram, splspro.com and our Facebook family know we are live. If you'd care to get comfortable, a pen, some paper, so you can scribe your notes, and then I shall begin with the introduction. Once Facebook allows me to post in the group. Here we go, last paste. And as always, we shall begin with introductions. Then I will start screen sharing and proofreading the first of 3 documents today. There will be 3 videos today. Bish bash bosh. Aye, aye, aye. Okay then. So welcome, good day, happy Thursday. Where are we? Let me show my boat race. Hello, welcome. I haven't got my phone to check the sound, so we'll do that in a moment. Hello, welcome. That's good enough for me. How are you? Lev Kung Fu, Shaolin.
Master.
How we doing? I'm on the ground level today. The camera looks a bit wonky, but that's the least of our concerns. We are going to go through a sovereign breakfast, if you like, at 10 to 10 cowboy time on Thursday the 31st of March. So you've asked me for further clarification regarding estate administration at a common law level of England and Wales, and primarily using private remedies such as equity and trust law. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to take you on a little trip first before we start, so then you know who, what, why, where and when, and then that will give you a better standing, you know, with regards to the propositions or maxims of equity, precepts in common law, your rights, and how to administer the estates effectively and correctly. So if I may just get on with the show, maybe I'll say hello to you in due course, but I will need to focus on the documents that I have to hand. So yeah, that's everything set up. I would like to show you, if you're new, subscribe to this channel. If you've recently found us, myself, the family, myself and the admins, our Telegram, our Facebook or our private domain, welcome and thank you for your support as always. It's appreciated, it's never taken for granted. I'm going to show everybody else a little bit about us, so just start by screen sharing this page. And I should get my phone. And we shall begin without further ado. Okay, so that's where we reside, in the private, where the bulk of our outlay, education, is happening. The public has liabilities, the private has an element of protection there. We all operate in the private, our persons operate in the public. We need to recognise the jurisdiction and the jurisdiction of ourselves, of commerce, of law, of rights, duties, obligations, liabilities. So we have our homepage for you there. There's a little landing page, a little bit about us. You feel free to have a look at that, become a supporter. Some introduction videos for you to watch there. If you're so inclined and you would like to go to our public outlets, media portals, you would go to splspro.com, and after reading about us, what we do, our ethos, our ethics, our purpose, our sacred contract that we've entered into on our own individual hero's journey, you may click the blue Facebook F, and that will then direct you to our Facebook public outlet where Kevin, some of the admins are, myself, and that will take you there. Okay, and then that's if it is screen sharing. Yes, it is. Very good. And then back to our private page. This page is accessible by a separate donation, so upon joining and supporting our foundation, educational private trust, you may choose to enroll, embark, begin on your educational journey and pathway into equity and trust law. We have an orientation guide workshop that we're about to restart, and this 3-part video series, which is composed in a total of a 9-part video series on the 3 certainties, is supplementary information to what we have here on these pages, which is some lectures and documentation and source references regarding the materials and the subject matter at hand. So we have this is just a skim through of the page that we have lessons within broken down for you to work through. There's audio files as well as text-based information, and also video files. Alright, so there's the audio files that I've gone through after showing you the introduction, and then we have some materials brought to us some years ago by Richard Ansar that we found, our community found extremely enlightening and insightful. These videos are 2 hours each. They're hosted on Indiglo. You can find these now on this channel under Equity and Trusts. So we have a lot of information and outlay for you to work through with us, and we will be holding regular chats, private ones via our dedicated Telegram group to walk through as we work through the various subjects and sections within this equity and trust lessons. Okay, so I would like to do a little bit of an introduction though as to who I am and how I got onto this pathway. Come from a single parent family background and I grew up on a council estate, so there's no academic legal advice or anything of the sort there. I'm primarily a warehouse man. I've not been to university, haven't got any qualifications or endorsements from any institution, organisation. I'm not licensed or accredited by anybody. I'm a father myself. I'm an ex-DJ. I have issues like the rest of you. Privately, I have to work 50 hours a week, 200 hours a month, 2,200 plus hours a year, and I'm presenting this and compiling this in my spare time with a view to making the future better for all of us, and so our assets, offspring, lineage won't have to go through the same threats and succumb and obey to the force of law blindly, ignorantly, unknowingly, as we have all done and our forefathers have done in the past leading up to this point here today. So if you want some legal advice, this is not the place to get it. There is no legal advice here. I'm simply sharing information and outlining possible private alternative avenues of education and information that in this day of information, ignorance is indeed a choice. We have disclaimers, but I'll not get into that now on an early morning such as this. So that's a little bit of an introduction as to where we are and who we are, what we are, why we are. I got into this because of my 2 sons. Got into this legal, lawful, Abrahamic, Mosaic arena and stumbled upon a triangle, equity and trust, some years ago, and the rest is history. 2014, 2016ish, it really started to accelerate, and now we're in 2022, so a good 10 years leading up from common law, Magna Carta, free man on the land, constitution, practical lawful descent, all under my belt. So what I'd like to do now is to begin with no further ado. I'm going to get my first document up for you. Which is part 1 of the certainty of intention, equity and trusts. I don't want this one because I have dark mode on, and with the watermark it's going to be hard for you to see, so I think, no, not email, don't load the email. I have another document ready here, there we go, which is going to be easier on the mince pies for you. Bit of apple juice, chin chin, cheers. And I hope you're ready for an exciting, fun journey into the subject of the 3 certainties. So I have a disclaimer there, which is on the document. I've already given you a verbal disclaimer. There is one thing that I wanted to read that I haven't. Wait there. tired. I've not been very well this week. I've recently recovered from a horrendous virus, non-COVID or corona, but it knocked me out for a week, so I'm still a bit foggy. It's early morning. I had a late night working on all of this, and you'll have to excuse me for not being as sharp as usual. So this is, as promised, your detailed analysis and breakdown of the three certainties and all supporting case and point references of the laws of England, the High Courts, including respective Lords' opinions on the cases. And there will be a total of 9 videos in this presentation series. There will be 3 videos on each of the 3 certainties. 3 times 3, I believe, is 9. So I trust this will help you navigate these stormy waters. The content within these presentations is vital to hold prior to expressing a homemade last will and testament. You are also going to be presented with a 2-part video on the rule against perpetuities, which is also vital information one needs to know regarding how to express private trusts effectively. These documents shall be uploaded to our private pages containing our equity and trust orientation lessons, and we are going to restart these lessons very soon. You are able to enroll on these lessons for a £50 donation. And more information to follow for those wishing to come and learn with us. Okay, so that's something that I forgot to read that helps you out there. Now we shall begin. So there's our legal disclaimer, which I can skim through. And here is page 2 of 10. How do? And say hello to JP. Lord Shinebox. Excellent, I do like that. That's tickled me. So it's the self-titled Certainty of Intention Part 1, Equity and Trust Part 1 of a 3-part series. This document is subject to amendment, correction and revisions. This is the text that I am using for my video series on the certainty of intention. So do not take the content of this video as to be final and conclusive. It will be subject to amendments and corrections and revisions and additions, so you will need to find the actual finalised published document as opposed to taking this video's content verbatim. So in this video we're going to be looking at the 3 certainties, or begin our discussion on the 3 certainties, and these certainties are fundamental to the validity of any trust. So make sure you know these 3 certainties off by heart. There's also a potential 4th certainty as well, that we shall look at in due course. If one of these 3 certainties is uncertain, then a trust itself may be invalid. And we're going to begin by looking at the case of Knight versus Knight as a precursor to us talking about the 3 certainties. As a general rule, it has been laid down that when property is given absolutely to any person, and the same person is by the giver who has the power to command, recommend or entreated or wished to dispose of that property in favour of another in trust, on trust, the recommendation, entreaty or wish shall be held to create a trust. First, if the words are so used that upon the whole they ought to be construed as imperative. Secondly, if the subject of the recommendation or wish to be certain, and thirdly, if the objects or persons intended to have the benefit of the recommendation or wish be also certain. Now that does sound perhaps a little bit confusing, but really when creating a trust, all this is saying is that it's important that the settlor, acts with sufficient certainty, and there are 3 certainties required for the creation of a valid express trust. The settler must demonstrate clear intention to create a trust as opposed to creating something else. Secondly, the trust property must be sufficiently segregated from the other property so that the trust fund is certain. Thirdly, the people who are to benefit from the trust must also be identified with sufficient certainty. These forms of certainty are commonly referred to respectively as certainty of intention, certainty of subject matter, and certainty of objects. I will keep repeating certain parts so they get embossed into your ments. Without such certainty, a trust will be held to be void. When we are talking about express trusts, we are concerned with any situation in which the settlor performs actions with an intention which equity will analyse as disclosing as sufficiently certain intention to create a trust. And in this video we're going to begin talking about certainty of intention, and we're going to finish these videos, or this certainty of, in the next 2 videos. So let's get started with the certainty of intention. The words used or the circumstances in which the trust was formed must show that it was the intention of the settlor that the trustee have an enforceable obligation to carry out their wishes or instructions. It must be shown that the settlor intended to create enforceable obligations on the legal owner of the property, that is the trustee. Precatory words desire, request will not under normal circumstances impose more than a moral obligation upon there is an enforceable obligation. It is important that the settlor intends, thinks, wishes, intends to create a trust as opposed to merely a gift or some other device. The simplest manifestation of that intention would be for the settlor to take advice from a solicitor and sign a formal declaration of trust in the form of a deed. Although do note that in many cases a written instrument will not be necessary for the creation of a trust. Let me just correct that. Before Knight versus Knight, which we looked at, the courts was far more willing to recognise trusts even where precatory words were used, but now precatory words will not create a trust. Words must now be imperative and unambiguous to create a trust. And as said before, the best way to make your words imperative and unambiguous, such as create a trust, is to explicitly use the word trust. If other words are used, the court will interpret the will or instrument to determine whether at the time the instrument was executed or written, the intention of the settlor was that the obligation should be a binding obligation, or whether the directions should only be a moral obligation. There is a difference between the settlor creating an enforceable obligation on the legal owner, that is the settlor to carry out the wishes of the settlor, and a moral obligation. It is important to determine whether it was the intention of the settlor to give the property to a trustee to look after it for someone else's benefit, or whether the recipient is simply given a moral obligation to look after property. There is a subtle difference between merely imposing a moral obligation on a person who is the recipient of property, such that a trust will not be created, and imposing a formal fiduciary obligation on that person, such as they become the trustee of that property. It is possible for one person to impose a moral obligation on another person in relation to the use of the property without that necessarily constituting a trust. For example, I may ask you to look after my car for a few minutes, but the words "take very good care of it," I will hold you responsible for any damages to it, without meaning that you will become a trustee of that car. All I want in this example is that you watch the car. I do not intend you to acquire any property rights in it, nor deal with it for anyone else's benefit, and therefore the only obligation I've imposed on you is merely a moral obligation to watch the car, as you promised to do. It is possible, therefore, as part of making a gift to someone, that the donor will seek to impose a moral obligation on them. When a parent gives a child money to buy a book, as the reward and says, don't spend it all on sweets. See, that does not make the child a trustee of the money. Instead, the child is under a moral rather than a legal obligation to use the money to buy a book. Now, you are still, there's paradoxical situations that arise, you are still entrusted. You know, trust is a broad term, and it depends how you're speaking and in what capacity and in what jurisdiction. Privately, you are entrusted every day. People give trust. Common law man and wife are based on a trust agreement, okay, but not necessarily a legal London Templars trust or England and Wales trust, but private trust. So we have jurisdictions that we operate in, and we can operate privately and still use trusts. But here in this video, we are strictly speaking about qualification, explicit terms and languages for legal and lawful trusts. Okay, so these are that would be regulated and interpreted by the court and recognised. So you may sort of think, well, you've used that example and the babysitter example previously. I have, to demonstrate the different jurisdictions. When I say jurisdiction, there are many layers of jurisdiction of which you operate, and you can operate in them simultaneously, and you use trust without knowing it. Just because you don't know it's a trust doesn't mean to say it isn't a trust, and so therefore you need to recognise that as well, that in these video presentations I will be strictly speaking and referencing legal England and Wales recognised enforceable trusts, not private, not what we've talked about within our private sovereignty and what happens in the private between us making private agreements, you know, at law, LORE. Okay, so we need to separate that now just to get the air clear. So the expression generally used by the courts to distinguish between a declaration of trust and a moral obligation is to define merely moral obligations as setting out precatory words. Merely precatory words do not create substantive obligations. And we have a case in point reference that I've picked up from the teachings of Professor Alistair Hudson and his publications, and various publications and CPR references and case in point references across my years of studying this subject matter. So Lamb versus Eames. In this case here, it was said that the words used in the case were to be at her disposal in any way she may think best for the benefit of herself and her family. These words are clearly precatory. There is no clear intention in those words that the property is to be held on trust. There is no clear intention to create a trust here. It was said that I apprehend that whatever the will begins with an absolute gift. In order to cut it down, the latter part of the will must shew as clear intention to cut down the absolute gift as the prior part does to make it. To create a trust, the words must be a clear intention to create a trust, and that's what this case said. In full confidence. As a general rule, following Lamb versus Eames, the court will find intention to form a trust when the words are imperative rather than precatory. The use of words which impose a request on the owner to use the property for the benefit of another will not be sufficient to form a trust. The use of the phrase in full confidence has two main cases. In one case it was held that there was a trust, and the other case it was held to be a gift. So to help you out and to make it simple, to show you how much work and research and discovery and effort and time we put into this to help you be able to protect your property, rights, family, and coexist in this legal and lawful realm, we will proceed on, and I shall mention Adams and the Kensington Vestry in 1884. So our first case, Adams and the Kensington Vestry in 1884, the particular phrase was in full confidence that she will do what is right as to the disposal thereof between my children. This was sufficiently certain to create a trust. So in this case, a testator that's somebody that was in the position of making a will, you know, last will and testament, a testator, left property to his wife by will in full confidence that she would do what was right by his children. It was argued on behalf of the children that the moral obligation imposed on the wife in the will created a trust. However, it was held that the property passed to the wife absolutely. Edit required. The court interpreted the statement to have added only a moral obligation on the wife to use the money in a way which would benefit the children, and not to place her under an obligation to hold that money as trustee for the children. Where a statement is analysed as being merely a statement of wishes in this way, it will not have the force of a trust. And then we look at Comiskey versus Bowring-Hanbury in 1905. The other case is Comiskey, and it was said that the particular phrase in this case was in full confidence that at her death she will devise it to one or more of my nieces in default of any disposition. I hereby direct that all my estate shall at her death be divided equally among the surviving said nieces. On the other hand, in his latter case, the testator left property to his wife subject to a provision for equal division among his nieces on his wife's death. Now, the precise words of the request were that the property was left to the wife in full confidence, that she would devise it to one or more of my nieces as she may think fit. Therefore, on the face of it, there would appear to be merely a moral obligation on the part of the wife to benefit the testator's niece. However, the House of Lords held by a majority a trust had been created. Now, this is because the entire instrument must be construed. You must look at the whole document and not just a particular phrase in isolation. Later words indicated that it was the intention of the settlor that a legally enforceable trust should be created and not just a moral obligation. A trust was created because, having expressed that the property would be dealt with in full confidence and thus looking like a moral obligation, the settlor went on to say that he directs that the property should be held on trust. This shows there was not just a moral obligation. Therefore, his wife did not take the property absolutely subject to a merely moral obligation to take care of her deceased husband's nieces. Rather, she was subject to the obligation of a trustee, and the property was held on trust for her for life, and then in remainder to her nieces equally. There is a fine distinction between these two cases. The different interpretation in these two cases shows that the court will construe the will of or instrument creating the trust in its entirety. Although both cases use the term in full confidence, which would, according to the strict post-Lamon-Eames approach, not create a trust. In Comiskey, the settlor had given directions as to what should happen to the property on his wife's death, should she fail to exercise the power of appointment given to her. In this case of Comiskey, the settlor had given the property to his wife to decide which one or more nieces should get the property. However, the direction that if the wife fails to make a disposition, the nieces will get the property equally on her death, was consistent with an intention to impose conditions on the gift, which he intended to be binding and not a mere obligation. So that is the end of this first part on the certainty of intention. We're going to continue with the certainty of intention in our next video, and specifically look at section 22 of the Administration of Justice Act 1982. And we're going to look at a couple of cases such as Harrison and Philcox as well. And then I've got Knight versus Knight reference here, which is an English trust law case embodying a simple statement of the three certainties principle. This has the effect of determining whether assets can be disposed of in wills or whether the wording of the will is too vague to allow beneficiaries to collect what appears on the face of the will to be theirs. The case has been followed in most common law courts, Court of Chancery, and the full case name Knight versus Borton. And there are, as you are coming to learn, and some of you will already know, there are 3 certainties required for the creation of a valid express trust. The set law must demonstrate a clear intention to create a trust as opposed to creating something else. Number 2, the trust property must be sufficiently segregated from other property so that the trust fund is certain. Number 3, the people who are to benefit from the trust must also be identified with sufficient certainty. And to reiterate, if one of these 3 certainties are indeed uncertain, the trust itself may be invalid. And then I've got a few pages of further information, which I'm not going to read out now because I want this video to be short and concise, but I've given you all of the source references, case and points for you to go further and look and discover yourself. And you are welcome to come and join us at www.splspro.com. In our private domain, you can find our public Facebook domain. You can find myself on this channel, on my backup channel, SPLS space PRO on YouTube, and we have various public and private Telegram groups which have been made available to you depending on where you are following us and supporting us. So that's the introduction regarding Knight versus Knight, the beneficiary principle, the certainty of objects with regards to fixed trusts. Okay, certainty of objects, discretionary trusts. I've actually expressed a discretionary trust, and Anna Marie has also, and we've got life insurance policies held in discretionary trusts. So again, I've done this. I've got first-hand knowledge of this, as well as learning from Professor Alistair Hudson, Richard Ansar many years ago, and publications and case and point references for you. So I speak of this from the heart and from knowledge. We have a conclusion there, the rules developed by the courts for certainty of object, and we have the footnotes where all of that above has actually been taken from. So that actually concludes the first video, which is one of 3 on the certainty of intention, and it is a 9-part series. So certainty of intention, certainty of objects, and the certainty of subject matter will each have 3 videos, short like this, okay, bite-sized and digestible. They'll be being put into a playlist, so they're made available to all, so we have clean hands and we share the knowledge. And then after we've shown you our capabilities, our intent, our honourability, and we would then invite you to consider coming to join us in the private and working with us and studying, so we can get a handle on all of this. But this information that I'm giving to you is on the back of me telling you that at the earliest point of convenience in life, as soon as practicably possible, one should consider expressing a last will and testament as early on in life as possible, and not leaving it until you're under attack, until creditors are coming, or until you get to the ripe old age of 50, 55, 60, and then you go to see somebody regarding writing a will, drafting a will, a last will and testament for you. You are able to do this under English law at home, privately, and done correctly. It will comply, conform, and be recognisable and enforceable under English and Wales law in high courts with these case in point and references, landmark cases agreed. Some of them are hundreds of years old, but in the day of quantum computing of 2022, we're still using acts that are hundreds of years old, technology which is hundreds of years old, and is relevant and enforceable and citable as you're going to learn if you follow these 9 video presentations on this certainty of the 3 certainties. So it is important that you consider and effect, express a will. This isn't legal advice, this is just practical, lawful defence. The legal system goes for the low-hanging fruit first. Whatever, much like an animal grazing in the wild, the trees with the fruits hanging down, the ones that go first are the low-hanging fruits. That's how this system operates. It goes for the easy targets, the easy wins. It eats the low-hanging fruit. And what my job is, what I've sworn to do, what our admins have sworn to do, is to protect God's breakable things and to share effectively this knowledge, this technology, and these areas of law for you to be aware of, because those that do not retain their rights at law will be viewed as having none. Nobody will tell you what your rights are. If you don't know what your rights are, if you don't know what your duties and obligations are and how to distinguish, how to protect effectively, we've had enough of using hearsay, conjecture. There's been enough supposition within this intellectual freedom movement, and it's about time we knuckled down and got down to the nitty-gritty, the facts of the matter, and we move forward with our homegrown grassroots sacred contract, where we are trying to provide a universal non-sectarian remedy for all, and fulfill our sacred contract to one another. And that is my job. There have been errors, mistakes, omissions, and now I'm at the level of confidence where I'm able to get the source materials that I've got in the repository of our private domain and collate them into an articulate, concise video series presentation. So I must, on this first video, give you a bit of a background and an introduction, and to help you along as to have that penny drop moment. If you need help, with this subject, then you know where we are. To join our private domain, we ask for a £12, 12 promises, 12 credit donation for the whole year. It works out at £1 a month, 25 pence a week. That's purely donation based. It's not running a business, because if it was, it would be hemorrhaging losses hourly, daily, weekly and monthly. This is done as low and as effectively as possible to make sure everybody gets a chance to defend their title rights to property, okay, and to do it effectively and honourably with clean hands. And we've reached a pinnacle in history, in time, in our lives, where we need to fix up, look sharp. Okay, so that's exactly what we're doing. And if you, again, need legal advice, then this is not the place to find it. I am not giving legal advice. It is denied and revoked. All right, it's classed as frivolous, and you need to go and find a licensed brief solicitor, lawyer, attorney, barrister, and go and speak to them. If you haven't got the means and capabilities of doing so, then welcome, much love, thank you. For a lad that grew up on a council estate from a single parent family that's primarily a warehouse man and an ex-DJ, I'm feeling quite accomplished with what we're about to present and do. And I'm telling you that not to get praise, not to get to bask in anything, but to let you all know that we're all the same. We're cut from the same cloth. This is as foreign to me as it is to any of you. And if somebody like myself can do it with the unique characteristics that I have mentally and physically, then any of you can do it as well. And if you need help, we're here to help, and we're here to do it together as one tribe with one focus and one mission. All right, so I'm going to be back me later today. In a few minutes I'm going to do presentation 2 and presentation 3. We're going to complete the first of the 3 videos on the certainty of intention, and I will also finish off and release, before I go back into the warehouse Saturday morning, the video series and the document on the rule against perpetuities. If you'd like to make a note of the rule against perpetuities and actually have a look at that and research that in the meantime, feel free to do so. And if you have expressed a last will and testament and you would like to check what you've got in your will against what the contents of this video outlay is, I think you might find that there are some areas that haven't been adequately detailed and covered, in which case there may be some precatory words, some ambiguously worded intention, and you may need to look at correcting that for reasons of security and to ensure that the will and the trust is valid. So it's got a dual purpose here as well, for those that don't have a Scooby-Doo and for those that do and that have had a go, that now would like to check what they've done. And obviously you all have the option to go and pay a high street solicitor to do that for you as well. Okay, that would be an option open to us all, but unfortunately in this day and age, money is an object, and it is in short demand, high demand and short supply at the moment, as we are seeing with the economy and inflation after Master Rishi printing to infinity. Well, not Master Rishi, the private banking cartel known as the Bank of England, issuing to the Treasury, issuing to the country, the Corporation of the United Kingdom, and we're feeling the knock-on effects of that. We're feeling the knock-on effects of the war that is presently ongoing. We send love and respect to all those that are affected, all those families that are, I wouldn't wish that, you know, on anybody. War is bad, killing is bad, misery, sorrow, pestilence, heartache, you know, lower vibrationary fields that we're being put in, lots of stress at the moment. It's hard for us to have a high self-esteem. Not many of us are perhaps feeling loved by the institution, by the monarchy, by the banks, by any of the legal public arenas, commercial arenas there. They're not our friends. It's purely business, and all's fair in love and war. So you know, I just wanted to add that as well, that this day and age, we're seeing, our groups are seeing, the feedback that we're getting is anxious, anxiety is heightened, depression is heightened, anger is heightened, uncertainty, heat or eat, you know, having to make decisions such as this and deal with the knock-on effects of the last 2 years plus the current geopolitical affairs and state of the realm. So sorry to digress there at the end, but I think it's relevant and it's worth saying, and we need to look out for one another, and that should be a good place to finish and say hello to my scribes, and I'll be back very shortly. If you've got time today, stay tuned to this channel, and video 2 will be on its way, and then video 3. Okay. Lord Shinebox. Delia, great info. I listened to your last video twice. Can you tell me the name of your TG channel, please? Yes, we will put a link in to the Telegram public chat. You can find that on our Facebook group as well, by clicking the blue F on our homepage. Thank you. Gansders has already put it in. Bless up. Nice one. Barnster, just caught up with the Rewind Selector. Hello there, Barney and Michelle and fam. Chippy Paul, only just seen the stream. Hope everything's alright. Thank you, Paul. What? Kathy, much love, sister. Good stuff. No wonder it's been quiet from your end. You've been busy. Indeed, I have. I've been prioritising. I've only got a finite amount of time, and I'd like to help everybody all the time, but unfortunately I don't have the funds, resources to do so, and I've got a lot to juggle, and I'm trying to manage everything as best as I can, and I apologise for the silences, the delays, and the wait that we have, but the more that come to support us and join our cause, the easier things will be. Hello to Sister Claire, good morning. One of the admins alongside Anders and Albert and Kevin, myself, Paul, Quinn, Simon. Thank you all, I love you lots. Jerry, will watch back, was on morning break. Jesus, I saw this word, perpetuities, interesting word. Yes, it is interesting, and I've got a whole 2 videos upon that. After these 3 certainties, I will stop the series on that before we move on to the next of the 3 certainties, and I will present the perpetuities, and it's important that we highlight that and make a note of it. Claiming the estate kills the system. Stand by and watch, and you will find out. Stephen, only going to be more cash printed until it's worthless. Yes, I have a video on my other channel, SPLS Pro, which I'd like you all to consider watching. I will show you that in a minute. Crypto is just about to take off in April. Not financial advice, no. But I hear what you're saying, and the markets are volatile and unstable. The fiat currency systems always crash. None of them have ever lasted. Walmart in America has gone cashless. Alright, if you'd like to just bear with me, and I will show you the backup channel that I've got that's got a nice video on about subject matter of which we're talking about. You search SPLS Pro on Tube and you will see my channel there. I've done a video recently, how evil runs the world prison on earth. One World Order, New World Order 2022 must see. Okay, so if you'd like to look at that, a 2-hour presentation, that's something a little bit different, but I think it's relevant for you all to at least watch once or make a note of, okay? And that's on SPLS Pro. You're currently on Indiglo, my primary channel. So yeah, that'll do. I'll be back shortly with video 2 if you're available today. I will give you a fist bump and say thank you very much.